All right, Shalom. I want to start by giving our praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who teach and rule well, and also to their elders, the men that taught them. I pray the Lord have peace, blessings, and mercy upon the households of the hopeful elect. This is the brother Shemawan from the Great Millstone Houston Church, and I want to come with a lesson titled, Our Enemies Aren't Comfortable Like They Used to Be. And just thinking about how the Lord fulfilled his part as far as his word in prophecy. You know, the scriptures talk about, we'll start with that, Revelations, the 11th chapter. But just thinking about how, you know, our enemies, which, you know, go back further from whenever we realized we had enemies. You read about Psalms, the 83rd chapter, you know, that ancient type of enemy spirit, right? But now the Lord returned the spirits to his prophets in the days that we're in. And now things are changing for our enemies. You know, one of the biggest things that allowed them to prevail was having the truth hidden. All right. That's why, you know, like the apostle Gabar says, you know, you can't have a lie without the truth. They know who we are. They know the true names of the living powers. But they hid that from us, you know, for ages and generations. But now the Lord allowed us to receive that spirit of truth. And now their world is crumbling. All right. And you can't do anything when somebody is fully persuaded, you know, that they have the truth. All right. And especially if the Lord proves it to us on a daily basis, man. You know, just to share a quick testimony dealing with the birth of a child. Just how wrecking it could be, how like mind wrecking it could be, dealing with, you know, these damn devils in your life when it comes to, you know, the medical field and, you know, such things like that. And I'm not giving any medical advice or anything. I'm just telling a story. But long story short, Esau puts fear in you. And the reason for trying to force fear in you is because they know the majority of Israelites don't have the truth. They know the majority of people don't have the truth. And one of the main things that's beneficial for an Israelite is to have faith. All right. And that's what our people lacks, you know, as a nation. They lack faith in the Lord. But these damn devils are trying to intervene with life and offer certain things as if the Lord needs help from an Edomite to help preserve life when it comes to giving birth to a child. And we denied that shit. You know, we denied the handout that Esau tried to give us, you know, and we see how much of a threat it is whenever you can't be lied to. And I'm just saying that because the Lord blessed us with the spirit of truth, where now we don't have to rely on Esau for advice when it comes to life, when it comes to health, you know, when it comes to anything that could be beneficial for us. We'll use their ass until we're done with them. But that's where it stops. And just keeping that in mind, like as far as what the days are going to be leading to very soon, talking about the chip. All right. Fuck Esau's handouts. We got the spirit of truth and we just got to remain faithful, you know, and Lord willing, we do. Lord willing, that's us, you know, who are able to endure until the end without wavering, without changing. All right. Esau is through, man. Let me get this real quick. This shouldn't be too long. I just want to get a few precepts on how, you know, our enemies aren't comfortable like they used to because now we got the truth. OK, the ball is in our hands when it comes to, you know, the defending life and health, you know, and actually, you know, promoting, you know, a better quality of life in its entirety, man. Salakia for the rambling. This is Revelation chapter 11 and verse 8. It says, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street, of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified, speaking about the dead bodies of the Israelites being in a dead state of mind, being in a Gentile, degenerate state of mind, having no truth, but taking all the ways of the heathens, everything that they offer, we got engulfed with. But we don't know who we are and what we ought to do, the commandments that we ought to keep, the God that we ought to pray to, his true name. All of that was removed from us all along the time where our enemies knew it. Okay. It says, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street of that great city, which is Babylon the Great, aka America, which spiritually is called Sodom due to, the highly exalted sodomite spirit that's pushed in America and throughout the four corners of the earth. America, it sits on the top when it comes to that. It says, and Egypt spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt. Both northern and southern kingdom are here in America, just like it was in the actual land of Egypt. It was, very rigorous work, that we had to do in the ancient Egypt, just like we still do to this day. All right. It says, where also our Lord was crucified. They cross out our God. They cross out, our true power. Just like in ancient Egypt, Pharaoh's like, who is this God, who you trying to go serve? It's the same thing. They don't acknowledge our true power because that's their authority or that's their advantage. Whenever we lack truth, we lack the knowledge and understanding that's meant for us, we are destroyed as a people, and they know that. But it says, verse 9, it says, and they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. So it was going to be a time period of 350 years. That's what the 3 days and a half represent, roughly from 1619 or 1620 to 1969 or 1970. Okay, that time period whenever that hardcore slavery, was served in America, and we got our heritage beat out of us. We got the truth stripped away from us. All right. And it said they didn't suffer to put their dead bodies to be put in graves, meaning they didn't tell us the truth. They didn't tell us that, hey, y'all are the true children of Israel. Y'all are the chosen seed that, God chose from out of all the nations of the earth. Yet they kept us in that dead estate where we think we're blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, you name it. Verse 10, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them. The nations were glad. They celebrated over our downfall, and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. So they were sending gifts to each other, meaning what? Us. We were those gifts. But let me get a precept. How they made merry over us. This is in Lamentations. 1 second. This is the book of Lamentation, chapter 1 and verse 21. It says, they have heard that I sigh. There is none to comfort me. All mine enemies have heard of my trouble. They are glad that thou hast done it. Thou wilt bring the day that thou hast called, and they shall be like unto me. And this is whenever basically Jeremiah is troubled, where the nations are rejoicing over our downfall. But Jeremiah says, they are glad that thou hast done it, meaning the Lord did this to us. Like it says in Baruch, pretty much because we served other gods, the Lord scattered us among the nations, not for our destruction, though. But it shows you the Lord is the reason for us being in the situations that we're in. every captivity, everything is justified with the Lord. All right. But real quick, let me read that precept. Baruch chapter 4 and verse 6, it says, "Ye were sold to the nations, not for your destruction, but because ye moved the Most High to wrath, you were delivered unto the enemies." You were delivered unto the enemies. So, yeah. So we were brought down and cast out of our land and scattered because the Lord did it. Because we forsook his ways, right? But it says, "All mine enemies have heard of my trouble. They are glad that thou hast done it. Thou wilt bring the day that thou hast called, and they shall be like unto me." So guess what? There's a day of recompense coming. Okay? Because a nation is not going to get away with how they dealt with the Israelites. Matter of fact, since I'm in Baruch, let's read a little bit. Let's go to Baruch chapter 2 and verse... Hold on. Oh, no, it's in chapter 4. Baruch 4, and let's jump over to verse 20. That's verse 30. Baruch chapter 4 and 30, it says, "Take a good heart, O Jerusalem, for he that gave thee that name will comfort thee. Miserable are they that afflicted thee and rejoiced at thy fall. Miserable are the cities which thy children served. Miserable is she that received thy son." So wherever our children were sent to, wherever they had to, endure that affliction, the Lord said a recompense is coming. It says, "For as she rejoiced at thy ruin and was glad of thy fall, so shall she be grieved for her own desolation." So the Lord is going to repay our enemies back for what they did to us. All right. And especially, just starting off at the beginning of this lesson, we got the truth now, so we know this is coming. What can they do? We're fully persuaded in the correct breakdowns of these very few prophecies that have to take place. Right. We just have to continue to remain faithful, to this word, man. Because our enemies, the Lord calls them our enemies for a reason. We are about to see the Lord get down in what he does to enemies of the nation of Israel, man. Finally, we are about to see what the Lord did in the ancient times, but even greater works, like it says in Sirach, the 36th chapter. These people are not getting off, as if they didn't do no harm unto us. Especially what they did to the name of the Lord. They got to pay for this shit, man. But Baruch chapter 4 in verse 34 now, it says, "For I will take away the rejoicing of her great multitude, and her pride shall be turned into mourning. For fire shall come upon her from the everlasting, long to endure, and she shall be inhabited of devils for a great time." That sounds like the same destruction that Babylon is allotted to. So the Lord is going to recompense our enemies, man. Let's get one more in Lamentations, how they rejoice at our fall. Lamentations chapter 2 in verse 15, it says, "All that pass by clap their hands at thee. They hiss and wag their head at the daughter of Jerusalem, saying, Is this the city that men call the perfection of beauty, the joy of the whole earth? All thine enemies have opened their mouth against thee. They hiss and gnash the teeth. They say, We have swallowed her up. We have swallowed her up. Certainly, this is the day that we looked for. We have found, we have seen it. Certainly, this is the day we have looked for. We have found, we have seen it." Again, they couldn't wait to see our downfall. All right. But the beauty of it is now we got the truth. Okay, so let's go back to Revelation chapter 11 and let's read down, or let's pick pick back up at verse 10. It says, and they that dwell, Revelation 11:10, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them. These other nations rejoicing over the Israelites in our fall. Okay. It says, and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. Verse 11, and after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from the Most High entered into them. So us being in that dead state, us having no truth, as it says in Proverbs 21:16, the man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. So we didn't have the understanding according to these scriptures. All right. So the Lord gave us back the spirit of life, gave us back the spirit of truth. All right. So after that happened, the prophets were raised back up. Roughly, this took place after the 3 days and a half, 1969 or 1970. So around that point of time, continuing on, it says, and they stood upon their feet. And they stood upon their feet, the elect. All right. And great fear fell upon them which saw them. So our enemies aren't as comfortable as they used to be, because we got this truth. And especially because how, these prophecies are unfolding now. It's undeniable. It's undeniable, man. It's like, the contractions are starting. All right. Contractions are starting, and what comes next. And the Lord has it where it's going to be perfect timing. We got to remain patient, in our suffering, because the Lord is going to be perfectly on time whenever he chooses to strike, man. All right. You can't forget, our enemies are running up a tab. All right. That their iniquities reach the heavens. So what type of judgment do you think the Lord is going to come down with? But it says, going back to verse 11, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them, because Esau knows what's next. After this truth comes out, after the elect get quickened and sealed, destruction is next. Judgment is next. All right. But verse 12, it says, and they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them, being delivered from the destruction. Like it says in Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter. Real quick. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5:1. It says, then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him, and made no account of his labors. And that's what the elect are doing. The elect are going out preaching this true doctrine, the good news, the truth of these scriptures. All right. That's why 2nd Ezra, the 2nd chapter, it tells you the benefit from being one of these. Hold on, I'm trying to find the scripture. The benefit from being one who's able to actually proclaim the name of the Lord, herald the way for the Lord's return, man. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 2 in verse 47. It says, so he answered and said unto me, I'll just start at 42 and read down. 2nd Ezra 2:42. I, Ezra, saw upon the Mount Zion, a great people who I could not number, and they all praise the Lord with songs. This is going into the elect. After the destruction came, this is in the chariot. How it said in Revelations, come up hither. Yeah, after that, this is what's going to happen next. All right. 2nd Ezra chapter 2 and verse 43. And in the midst of them there was a young man of a high stature, taller than all the rest, and upon every one of their heads he set crowns, and was more exalted, which I marveled at greatly. Yahushua. And it said he was a young man, showing you we got everlasting life awaiting, man. It says, so I asked the angel and said, sir, what are these? Verse 45, he answered and said unto me, these be they that have put off the mortal clothing, and put on the immortal, and have confessed the name of the Most High. Now are they crowned and receive palms, going into receiving the victory. So putting off the mortal, the flesh, the ways of this world, and putting on the immortal, having that renewed mind, walking in the ways of the Lord now, having that quickened spirit, moving by faith in truth. Verse 46, it says, Then said I unto the angel, What young person is it that crowneth them, and giveth them palms in their hands? So he answered and said unto me, It is the Son of God, whom they have confessed in the world. Then began I greatly to commend them that stood so stiffly for the name of the Lord. All right, that's the benefit. Being able to stand stiffly for the name of the Lord leads to victory and a crown. And our enemies know that. That's why whenever it said, we stood up on our feet, great fear fell upon them that saw it. All right, our enemies know. They know what's next. They don't have too much longer, man, until the Lord gets them. But let's go back to Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, and verse 2. It says, When they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear. So the same thing. And shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation, so far beyond all that they looked for. And why is it going to be like that? Because the Lord is going to come to this earth in chariots to invade this place. The heavenly vehicles, they're not UFOs, they're not UAPs. Little green alien niggas don't fly those ships. The angels of the Lord are in those chariots. All right, and the chariots are coming back to deliver and gather his elect and bring destruction to the non-elect. All right, but he saw us through. We got the truth. When you can't, break the mind, you're fucking done. Esau's done, man. The shits and giggles don't work no more. The Lord's spirit is active. So I'll end it there. I pray this was edifying to the Lord's elect. And until the next time, wait, hold on. Let me see. Yeah, I'll end it there. I gotta go. And until the next time, I say shalom.